And when he had spent all, there arose a mighty famine in the land, and he began to be in want. And he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country, and sent him into his fields to feed swine. And he would fain have filled his belly with the husks that the swine did eat, and no man gave unto him. And when he came to himself, he said, how many hired servants of my father's have bread enough to spare, and I perish with hunger? I will arise, go to my father, and I will say unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee. I am no more worthy to be called thy son. Make me as one of thy hired servants. Verse 20 says, and he arose. Amen. For a few moments, I want to tag this text, the message to my mirror. Amen. The message to my mirror. The great, well-known prophet Michael Jackson says, I'm starting with the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to change his ways. That oftentimes when we are thinking of change, we think of everybody and everything else that needs to change versus giving a message to our mirror. We're good with magnifying glasses because magnifying glasses look at other things and enlarge those things. It has nothing to do with me. We're good at telescopes, things that are far off, being able to make them closer. We're good with that, but it's difficult for us to look in the mirror. And when we look in the mirror, we've got to be honest with ourselves, because I've learned a couple things. One, I've learned I can be honest with me. I've learned I can be honest. I can tell me the truth and not get offended by me. I can tell myself the real deal. I don't have to sugarcoat it for myself. I can be real with me. And so the mirror helps me to talk to me, because sometimes if I'm not careful, I will not look in the mirror and I will judge my life upon somebody else's life. I will say I'm not doing as bad as they are doing. I say I'm not as worse off as they are. I've stopped what we used to do, and so I'm a little bit better than them. And so it's easy to judge us in comparison to other people. It's easy for us to look at ourselves in a different light because we're comparing ourselves to somebody else. But that's not the goal, to look at somebody else and see where we are. The goal is to judge us by ourselves. And the only way we can do that is give a message to our mirror. So for a few moments this morning, I just want to try to deal with this message that we need to talk to our mirror about. Is that all right? Is that all right? Because I'm talking to you as well as talking to me, because I can only talk to my mirror and you can only talk to your mirror. So the question that I need to ask today is, what needs to happen between me and the mirror? What do I need to talk about with me and my mirror? First of all, I really didn't want to deal with all of the text. I really wanted to just jump in verse 17 through 20a. 17 through 20 is really where I want to land this morning. I want to land this morning, 17 through 20a. And so it starts in verse 17, and when he came to himself. The first message I've got to give to my mirror is I've got to deal with and talk about what I've done. The text says when he came to himself, which implies that he wasn't always himself. That there's something that happened where he lost his self for a moment, and we all can understand that. We all can understand that. Well, why did he have to come to himself? Because of what has previously happened. He understood his leaving had an issue with him coming to himself. Let me run back, because y'all know the rule that if a preacher get up and start preaching here at Christ Central, if you read something, you need to deal with it. You need to deal with it. I can't be reading just scripture and don't talk about it. What's the purpose of reading it if I ain't gonna talk about it? So since I read at verse 11. Let me run back to verse 11. The text begins by starting off that said there was a man that had two sons. These two sons, the younger one says, "Father, give me my portion of goods that fall unto me." What he is literally asking his father for is for his inheritance. That don't seem too wrong. He want what's due to him. What's the bad thing about that? What's the big deal about asking for his inheritance? Is for him. Well, in their culture, basically what he is saying to his father, "Daddy, give me the stuff that you're going to give me, and I'm going to treat you and consider you dead in my life." He's saying, "Daddy, give me now, treat me now like you're already dead." This son got the stuff from his daddy, so the dad divided his inheritance between the two sons. Culturally, the inheritance was split up. It was 2/3 giving to the oldest son and 1/3 divided amongst the other children. So this son at most received 1/3 of what daddy had prepared for him. And can I just pause right there for a second to say that as fathers, as men, we ought to be leaving something for our children. My children ought not live life, ought not leave this earth without leaving them something to take care of them. That is a man's responsibility, to take care of his family even after he's gone. Ought not be that you all having to run around trying to scrape up $3,500 to bury me. Amen. Lights and walls. Ought not have to be getting loans and trying to figure out, can I get 500 from you? Can I get 200 from you? Can I go? No, we need to prepare ourselves. Culturally, we have an issue with that. Culturally, we have an issue with that. We don't want to think about dying, but we need to prepare ourselves. And so this man is prepared and ready and able and gives unto his children their inheritance. Text says, not many days after, the younger son took all that he had and left. He went and he spent all that he had in riotous living. He was living wild. He was balling out of control. He was turned up all the way. He was doing his thing. The problem is in verse 17, when he has to come to himself, is because he lost himself. You see, in Daddy's house, he had everything that he needed. Daddy provided all that he needed. He never had to worry about anything. Daddy took care of him. And when he got out on his own, he abandoned the covering of his father, and it caused him to lose his mind. It caused him to do things he had never done before. It caused him to act ways he never acted before, so much so that he became broke. Had to go and get a job. And he had to feed the pigs. Jews did not fool with pigs. They didn't fool with pigs. Pigs were unclean animals. And so it was a disgrace. It was nasty. It was dirty for them to deal with a pig. I mean, it was nasty, 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 nasty. Nasty, 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 nasty. The nastiest thing you can think of is what they thought about. The stuff that you say, I ain't never doing that. That's how they felt about dealing with pigs. And he had to go and feed the pigs, which means he had to get in the pig pen. And he long desired to eat what the pigs ate. He's that low that he want to eat what the pigs eat. Good times. The old lady used to eat dog food. Yep. You ain't never got so low where you said, I'm going to get me some dog food, or I'm going to get me some cat food. We don't get that low, but that's how low he was. That I wish I could have what these pigs are eating. These dirty, nasty, filthy pigs. I want to eat what they're eating. What have I done? That's what we got to talk about in this mirror, what I've done. And it became this way because I left home prematurely, but also because of where I am. I'm in this horrible place. I'm in this nasty place. I'm in this filthy place. And the reality is sometimes in our mirror, we see where we really are. You've gone so far, you've done so much stuff, you've said so much stuff, you started thinking these thoughts, having these desires, and you realize I'm in a nasty place. I know we can't tell other folk that this is where we are, that this is what we're thinking, but I can be honest with myself. I can look in my mirror and say, I really am ashamed of what I have become, what I've done, what I'm desiring, what I want. I'm there. This boy is there. Because of the lifestyle that he had, the way he chose to live his life after leaving daddy's house caused him to be in this predicament, caused him to be in this location, caused him to be in this pen. Can I tell you that whenever you leave the Father's house, you'll always end up in pig pens. Amen, lights and walls. I know it's tough right now, but it's going to get a little better in a minute. But whenever we leave daddy's house, we will always end up in the pig pen. We'll always find ourselves doing that which we said we wasn't going to do. We'll find ourselves going back on our word because we promised God, I'm not going to do that ever again. But when we've left daddy's house, when we left God, when we left our fellowship with God, we found ourselves smoking again. We found ourselves again. We found ourselves shooting again. We found ourselves doing all kind of stuff again that we know ain't right. But we did it anyway. We were there anyway. Drunk out of our minds. Lying again. Being evil again. Holding people to a level that we're not willing to hold ourselves again. Judging folk again. Not caring for folk again. All because we left daddy's house. This boy has left daddy's house. And he has to look in the mirror to recognize and realize and talk to himself about what he has done. There is a message to our mirror. There's a message to my mirror. There's a message to your mirror that you must give. And that, first of all, deals with what we've done. What we've done. We get to the place where we've got to have a change in our minds. This man desired to have what the pigs were eating, but nobody gave it to him. But in verse 17 it says, and when he came to himself. That means no matter where you are, no matter what you've done, you're not gone too far for you to come back to yourself. I know that in the church it's hard sometimes because when we see people that we expect to be on a certain level, when they say that they've messed up, it's hard for us sometimes to forgive them. It's hard for us sometimes to let them, to receive them back. We've got to beat them down. We've got to whip them. We've got to shun them. We've got to abandon them because they know better. That's not the way it ought to be in the church. That's not the way it ought to be. We ought to be loving toward those that recognize their wrong. I love the fact I seen a couple weeks ago, I think it was last month, pastor of a mega church, he said, you know what, church, I messed up. Didn't say how he messed up, but he said, I messed up. And the church didn't say, well, we voting you out. The church didn't say, we turn our back on you. The church didn't say any of that. They said, Pastor, we still love you. He pastored thousands of folk in California, but they just said, Pastor, we love you. We support you and your family. You want privacy? We're going to give you the privacy to keep whatever it is that happened private. And so the fact that the church was able to say, I recognize that you recognize your issue, and we still love you, we still respect you, is the way the church ought to be. It ought to be that if somebody comes in here and they don't have their life together, that we still love on them. It ought to be that we still desire for God to do a work in their lives. It ought not be that we say, because you ain't got it together, I'm looking at you funny. Because you haven't mastered life and mastered your relationship with Christ, that you are worse than me, that I'm better than you. Because we all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. And so what it is in our mirror that we must do is we must recognize what we have done. This man says, when he came to himself, and there is a spot that everybody can come to their self. Amen. Lights and walls. There's a time in their life that they can come to themselves. I know that they ain't doing right now. I know there's some people in your life that ain't got it together yet. I know there's some people that you keep on shaking your head and trying to shake them and make them get it, but keep on praying. That's what the song says. Somebody prayed for me, had me on their mind, took the time to pray for me. I'm so glad they prayed. I'm so glad they prayed. I'm so glad that they prayed for me. Somebody that wasn't there is celebrating the fact that somebody prayed for them, and now there is a change in their life. Can I just tell you right here, if you will begin to pray for those people, you'll see a change happen over them. You'll see something work in their lives that is beyond what you're able to say by what you do. You'll see God move on your behalf because you are praying for them. This man came to himself because he recognized what he had done. So if I'm going to give a message to my mirror, I've got to first of all deal with what I've done. Don't hide it. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't make it sweeter than it really is. Tell the truth to yourself and say exactly what it is. Tell your mirror, you promised this to God, but you didn't do it. You said that you weren't going to go back there again, but you did it anyway. You said you wasn't going to try it anymore, but you tried it anymore. You said you was going to keep your mouth shut, but you opened it up. Tell it just like it is, because it's your mirror. Not only is there a message that we have to give to our mirror about what we've done, but secondly, we've got to talk about what we deserve. The text says in verse 17, and when he came to himself, he said, how many hired servants of my father's have bread enough to spare, and I perish with hunger? I will arise, go to my father, and I will say unto him, I have sinned against heaven and before thee. I am no more worthy to be called thy son. Make me as one of thy hired servants. The message to my mirror is first of all about what I've done, but secondly is about what I deserve. He says, I'm going to say to my Father. There's an address that he has. There is a person that he's going to talk to. He's going to talk to the Father and say to the Father, not just to everybody, not to the servants, not to the sons, but to the Father. You see, when we come back to the house, when he come home, he says, I'm going to go to my Father, and when I get there, this is what I'm going to say to my Father. You see, don't think that you could just walk back in the house after you left any kind of way. If you can cuss me out, told me I wish you were dead, and slammed the door on your way out, don't just walk back up in my house, putting your feet up on the couch, changing the TV channel, and thinking everything's all right. No. He says, this is what deserve. I need to tell my Father about my actions. He says, I need to tell him that I've sinned against heaven and against thee. I've sinned against heaven and against thee. Because all sin, first of all, is against God. Everything I've done wrong is against God first, because God is the one that has been there, that loved me, that is responsible for the sin in my life. He's the one that's able to wash me. He's the one that has cleansed me. He's the one that's able to purify me from my sin. So I owe God an apology first. That after all the right he's done for me, I did him wrong by sinning against him. He said, I'm going to talk about my actions and tell him that I've sinned against heaven and against you. Because the reason I'm sinning against heaven is because I did wrong by God. But the reason I'm sinning against you is because my name is attached to you. You see, the reason that the Father and the Son heard about what the Son was doing was because the Son's name is attached to the Father. Okay. I can't just go out and act any old kind of way and think that my name ain't attached to you. I can't just go and act any old kind of way and think that it's not going to be attached to Christ Central. It's not going to be attached to my wife and my kids. It's not going to be attached to them. No. I am doing a disservice and a disjustice to you if I go and act a fool and I'm attached to you. What did it look like? The pastor on the news, talk about the pastor and got pulled over for drunk driving and he got 3 kilos in the trunk of a car. They gonna say, you go to that church? That don't sound right. That don't look right. That ain't right. And so even though I did it myself, I didn't do anything at the church because of my association. It's done a disservice to the church. And folk will look at you and be like, man, that's your pastor. You just do it. Man, look, he crooked, you must be crooked too, because y'all all in this thing together. And so it's a disservice. And so the Son recognizes that me going out and doing what I was doing has done damage to your name. Can I just tell you for a minute, when we go and act a fool, we do damage to the name of Christ. Folk at your job will look at you and say, I thought you was a Christian. Folk in your family will look at you and say, they just playing church. Folk that are around you will say, I thought that you had changed. And it does a disservice to the family, to the body, to the believers, the assembly of God. Can I just pause right here to get in your business? That's why some of your family don't never come to church with you, because they see you outside of church. They see you getting dressed on Sunday morning, but they see you getting dressed Saturday night too. And so it is a conflict of interest. It is a conflict of your responsibility as a believer, and they're confused because you're saying one thing but doing another. This boy knew right, but acted a fool. This boy knew to do right, but was out spending his money on prostitutes and drugs. This boy knew right, but wasted his dad's money that was meant to prolong and establish his life. What the Father set up to be a blessing to him led to the curse of his name. Said, I gotta apologize. And I don't deserve to be called your son. He says, make me as one of your hired servants. That's what I'm going to do. That's what I deserve. I deserve to be made as one of the hired servants. I don't deserve to be called the son. I don't expect any advantage. The sin stain in my life is not worthy of a place of prestige. The sin stain in my life grants me unworthy of a place of prestige. That means that if I'm even allowed in the house of God, I ought to be glad to be able to clean the toilets. Yes, sir. just to be able to be in the house. I ought to be rushing to do something because I'm not worthy. There is no advantage that I ought to take. I know I can sing. I know I can preach. I know I can shout everybody real good. I know I can be a great encouragement. I know I can do all these great things. I can welcome people. I can build people up. But I ought to be just glad just to be able to scrub the floor with a toothbrush. Because I don't deserve, after all that I've done out there, can't come in here and think that I deserve a place of prestige in here. The sin stain in my life has ruined me from the place that puts me on an elevated place. I'm just ought to be glad to be in the lowest place. Yes, sir. The fact that I'm just allowed in the building ought to give me joy by what I did out there, by the stuff that has transpired in my life, the stuff that I've been found guilty of doing, the stuff that I know I did that maybe nobody even knows that I did. I ought to be just glad to be able to come in here and clean the baseboards. And if we had a mentality like that, if we really came and looked in the mirror and said, this is what I deserve, I guarantee you we'll be a better church, we'll be a better people. If we understood this is what I really deserve, how do I deserve to come in the house of God and sit up in the comfort? How do I deserve to be able to come in the house of God, come in here and be relaxed after all that I've did, after all that I've said, after all the mistakes that I've made, out of all of the stuff that has gone on in my life that was my fault. I don't deserve to be allowed in here. But yet I want to come in here. I want my name called. I want people to recognize me after who you really are. How dare you? How dare us expect to be praised? How dare? You a pedophile out there. You ain't messed with a kid in 3 days, but you want to come in here and you want your name on a plaque on the wall. You've been high all week, but you want to come in here in God's house and you want a special seat. You can't stop cussing. You can't stop lying on folk. You can't stop gossiping. But you want to come in here and get on the mic. We ought to recognize we don't deserve anything. We don't deserve to be sitting in comfortable seats. We ought to be proud and privileged just to be able to stand. You do understand how it used to be, right? It used to be that the priest would go into the Holy of Holies, and what the priest would do is they would do two things. They would, one, tie a rope around them, and they would tie a bell around their foot. The reason they would tie a bell around their foot, so as they're walking, you can hear them walking. And at any point the bell stopped moving, they would know that the Lord has struck you dead. They know that they would be unworthy, so they couldn't go in and get you. They would use the rope to pull you out. The priests recognized that God could take him out at any time, but we want to come in here like we deserve something and think that it's okay for us to be the way that we are. Now, I ain't talking about to the one that just met the Lord. I'm talking about those that are saved, sanctified, you filled with the Holy Ghost. You've been walking with the Lord long enough to know. You've been walking with the Lord long enough to do right, but you just still won't do right. This man says, I was in the house with my father, but I went out and did wrong. He says, this is what I deserve. I just want to be like a hired servant. That's the best, that's the lowest spot, but that's the best I could ask for. It's the best I could ask for because I'm no longer worthy. The place of prestige has been stained by my sin, and I don't fit anymore. I'm not worthy of it anymore. Because you got to understand how he understood that the Father would see him, how the Lord would see him, how the King of Kings would see him, kind of like coming to America. When the king came to New York and knocked on the door, Arsenio Hall opened the door, screamed, shut the door. and opened it back up, the king says, what in the world? Look at here. Y'all go and bathe him. Put on some proper attire because he had been stained. He didn't say bathe him. He says bathe him thoroughly. Because of the stain and the stench that was on his life. He understood. The king recognized how dirty he was, and that's the way we are. We don't deserve it to be able to come in here and be and do anything. I don't care how talented you are. I don't care how gifted you are. I don't care how wonderful you are. We are sin stained. And the stain of our sin has disqualified us from what God really wants to do in our lives. It has messed up God's original plan for our lives. This young man has to give a message to his mirror. And it starts off by talking about what he has done, continues by what he deserves, but it concludes with what he should do. Verse 19 says, I'm no more worthy to be called thy son. Make me as one of thy hired servants. Verse 28 says, and he arose and came to his father. What should I do? I'm looking in this mirror at somebody that has messed up. I'm looking at somebody that has done wrong. I'm looking at somebody that has made some mistakes. I'm looking at somebody that does not deserve to be anything, at best a servant in the house of the Lord. What should I do? After he came to himself, after he understood what he deserved, he recognized what he should do. He arose and he went home. The direction he went was home. He didn't go back and try to find the friends that he had while he was partying. He didn't go to his employer and ask him for a better job, ask him for a raise, ask him if he can come into the house. He didn't do any of that, but he said, let me go home. After I've recognized my mistakes, after I recognize where I've done wrong, after I've recognized how I've gotten off track, let me go home. You see, although I don't deserve to be able to go home, that's the only place that there is help. Although I don't deserve to be able to go back and be a part of my Father's house, I know that's the only place that I could get help. When I look back over my life and I see all of my good days and my bad days, I recognize that even in all of that, my best days were at my Father's house. So if I could just make my way back home. I know I'm dirty, but I got to go back home. I know I've sinned, but I got to go back home. I know I'm falling short of His glory, but I got to go back home. I know I've messed up Daddy's name, but I got to go back home. I know that I haven't done right, but I got to go back home. So my mind has to be that no matter what has happened, what I should do is I got to go back home. I know you may wonder, how, Pastor, do I go back home? How do I come back to my father's house? Folk will look at me. Folk will talk about me. Folk know my business. They know my mistakes. They know my errors. They know my pitfalls. They know what I've done. But how is it that I'm able to go back home? Well, this is what you've got to recognize. This is not about your brother and you, but it's about you and your father. Yes. So this young boy decides to go back home. It's not enough to recognize that you need to go back home, but you've got to put one foot in front of the other to go back home. There is a direction that he has, but not only is there a direction that he has, but there's also a directive that he has. On his way back home, what should he do? Because my directive is tied to my direction. And my directive, my instruction to myself is that I'm not worthy to be called his son. Yes, sir. My directive is that I just want to ask for my job. I just want to ask for a job. I can't come in expecting to be a son again. Yes, sir. But I just want to interview for a servant's position. I just want to work for my father because I realize that other employers won't treat me like my father. Yes, I was starving working for somebody, but my father's servants have food enough to spare. There's nobody like my daddy. And so although I've got to swallow my pride, although I've got to leave this place, although I've got to battle against myself, I got to find my way back home. And I just want to ask the Lord, can I work for you? I know that other folk are proud about their position. I know other folk are asking for an elevation. I know other folk are asking for a raise. But Lord, whatever you'd have me to do, Lord, I just want to do it because I realize that I am unworthy to be called thy son. My sin has messed me up, but the fact that I can come back home, I'm just grateful for an opportunity. And so you've got to know that on your way home going, you can find out what kind of God you serve. I didn't read it in the text, but it says that he went home, but on his way home, the father saw him while he was alone, the way off, ran to him, wrapped his arms around him, put sandals on his feet, a robe on his back, a ring on his finger. Because the daddy really wanted him back home. He didn't treat him like he was a servant, although he had his mindset that he's nothing worthy but more than being a servant. The daddy had more in store for him. I'm just trying to tell somebody, don't be blinded by what you really deserve. Know that you don't deserve anything. So whatever the Lord does for you, you just ought to tell God thank you. Because you've messed up too much. You've messed up too much. You've messed up too much. Messed up too much. Messed up on Monday. Messed up on Tuesday, on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. You messed up Saturday, even after church on Sunday. You found yourself messing up. So the fact that Father would see you grants you the opportunity just to bless his name. And I tell you this, that whenever we find ourselves giving ourselves over to the Lord, he will do great and wonderful things. Can I tell you that if you just find Jesus, you'll find more in Jesus. I'm just trying to tell somebody, if you come back home, you'll find the Lord, and in the Lord you'll find some joy. I know the world has had you crying tears. I know the situations have made you bow your head in shame. But if you find the Lord, you'll find some joy. Not only will you find some joy, but let me tell you, you'll find some peace. Don't have to worry about all night long what you're going to eat and where you're going to sleep, what you're going to drive, how you're going to pay this, how you're going to do this, how you're going to go there. You don't have to worry because because you'll find peace. Whenever you find the Lord, you'll be able to find peace. Not only will you find joy, but you'll find peace. Not only will you find peace, but you'll find rest. That means that I'll be able to rest in the Lord. Whenever I'm able to rest in the Lord, I can relax and lay out in the Lord. Says, Father, I stretch my hand to thee, knowing that you will take care of me. Will you go searching to find the Lord? When you find the Lord, he'll give you rest. Rest from your worrying, rest from your aches, rest from your pain, rest from your frustration, rest from all that you're going through. The Lord will give that to you. If you find the Lord, let me tell you, you'll find joy. Not only will you find joy, but you'll find peace. Not only will you find peace, but you'll find rest. Not only will you find rest, but you'll find hope. Hope that all is not lost. Hope that God can still do something in your life. Hope that God is not done with you. Hope that there is a tomorrow. Hope that your sin has not stained you. Hope that your sin will not lead to your demise. Hope that everything will be all right. Whenever you find the Lord, you'll find a hope. If you never, ever, 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 ever recognize anything else, recognize that when you find Jesus, you find all that you need. You've got to understand, like the hymn writer says, Jesus, I'll never forget what you've done for me. Jesus, I'll never forget how you set me free. Jesus, I'll never forget how you brought me out. I'll never forget. No, never. I just came by to tell somebody today about what should you do. I'm going home and I'm going to find Jesus. And when I find him, everything will be all right. God bless you. Heaven smile upon you. But if I've got Jesus, everything will be all right. He'll take away my pain, take away my stain, take away my hurt, and take away the shame. He'll do it. I guarantee you, he'll do it. Find Jesus. He's able. He's able. He's able. Anybody know that he's able? Can you say yeah? Say yeah. Say yeah. Yeah. I know he's all right. I know that he's able. Every time he'll do it. Is there anybody in here that had a mirror experience and you came back running, says, Father, I need your help. Father, please, 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 please forgive me, Lord, for all I've done, all of my mistakes, all of my pain, all of my sorrow. Please, 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 Lord, I need thee. Nobody can do it but you, Lord. Thank you, Lord, for my mirrors. Thank you, Lord, that I can look at me. Thank you, Lord, that I can come home sin stained, but I'm coming home. Messed up last night, but I'm coming home. Mine still ain't right, but I'm coming home. Thank you, Lord, for all you've done. All you've done for me. All you've done, time and time again. You forgave me. You healed me. You restored